Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the EOB podcast. So, last weekend we have the release of three movies. We have First Man, starring Ryan Gosling, about Neil Armstrong, and then Goosebumps 2: Haunted Halloween, the sequel to Jack Black's Goosebumps. From a year or two ago, I believe. He plays the author R.L. Stine, and then Bad Times at El Royale. One of these thrillers that has the Quentin Tarantino vibe. We'll see how those movies did at the box office. All right, let's jump right in. Let's get started. So coming in at number one is Venom, the movie repeated from the previous week. It's been this is the second week at the top spot right now. It dropped about 56% from the previous weekend to pull in about 35.7 million at the domestic box office. Domestic gross so far is 142 million, and worldwide it is at 378 million. 237 of that is from overseas. It hasn't opened in China yet, I believe, but considering the subject matter, I don't know if it will. It might. All right, let's move on to number two. A Star is Born. It is the Bradley Cooper Lady Gaga's collaboration. Pulled in about 28 million from the previous weekend, about 35% drop off. So it's kind of low for a movie this type, right? 94 million domestic so far. Let's see for overseas, 42 million from overseas for a worldwide total of 136 million. This is a movie that I said could probably open up in the 15 to 20 million range, but hey, my projections out of the water, it pretty much doubled that, open to 42 million, and it continue on to hold. Hey, it's Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper, the collaboration works. All right, let's move on to number three, which get to the new releases of last weekend. This is First Man. So the movie pulled in 16.5 million in its opening frame. I say the movie could probably open to 15 to 20 million, so I was kind of right there. It's directed by Damien Chazelle, starring Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong. Claire Foy, Jason Clarke is here, right? So I think it's a pretty good opening for a movie that cost about 59 million to make. It's well reviewed, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, a B+ cinema score though. So let's see how well it holds up in the second weekend. Considering how well reviewed it is, it might not drop off that huge. But then again, the audience score, the cinema score, B+, is decidedly average. So we will see come second weekend. All right, the next one, number 4 on our list, is Goosebumps 2: Haunted Halloween. This is a movie that I was completely wrong on. I said the movie could probably open to 30 million because it is a sequel to the first movie. The first movie opened to 23 million, went on to gross 80 million domestically and 150 million worldwide, 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. So well reviewed, well liked movie. And I thought I'd give it a sequel bump. So 30 million opening, a couple more million from the opening of the first movie, but it was proven wrong. It opened to around 16.2 million. The numbers are still in flux, by the way. So, when the real actual number comes in, it might come in number 3 or stay at number 4. So these are just estimates. But Goosebumps 2. Why did it do so poorly? It has a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, a B cinema score, and in the promos, right, Jack Black was hardly seen in the promos. He was in the movie, but he has a limited role. So that could attribute to why Goosebumps 2 is not performing, since, the reason why people see the movie in the first place, right, for Jack Black, right, and majority of the time he's not in it. So that could be it, or it could be that, hey, one Goosebumps movie is enough and people didn't want to see more. Could be that. Oh, Oh, and of course, maybe it's poorly reviewed as well, right? That has a lot to do with it, I believe. All right, let's move on to number 5, Smallfoot. It put in about 9.3 million in its third weekend, 35% drop off from the previous week. Domestic gross is 57.6 million, and let's see where it is globally. Worldwide it's at 110 million, 53 million of that from overseas. So a small movie. I think it doesn't cost that much to make it. I don't have the budget on me. Let me see if I have the budget here. Yeah, 80 million budget. So it's doing okay-ish, until it opens up in more territories, right? But so far it's doing okay, considering that it is a movie that's from Warner Brothers Animation, right? Right now it's not known for their animated movies, except for the Lego movies. Smallfoot is kind of like them branching out, doesn't have to rely on the Lego brand. So it's doing decent. I say decent. All right, let's move on to number 6, Night School, the Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish comedy. The movie opened to 27.2 million, way higher than my projection. In its third weekend, it pulled in about 8 million. Yeah, so nothing more to say about this comedy except that it is doing well, since the budget is only 29 million, and it already went way past that domestically at 59 million, and worldwide, like again, comedies don't usually travel well overseas, so only about 15 million of that from overseas for a worldwide total of 75. But hey, it's doing plenty well domestically. All right, let's move on to number 7, which is one of the new releases last weekend. It is Bad Times at El Royale. The movie is directed by Drew Goddard, starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Hemsworth, John Hamm, Jeff Bridges, etc. About group of strangers or not, right? Coming and converging on this motel, and they all have this pass, and probably a shoot up at some point, right? And I said this movie kind of reminds me of Dragon's Gate and some of the like Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino. It has that vibe. I said the movie would probably open to about 8 million. 8 to 10 or so. It opened to about 7 million, so which is kind of right there at the lower end of my projections. So and let's see, it's well reviewed, 71% at Rotten Tomatoes, but a B- cinema score. So it's one of these movies that critics like, but the general audience might not take a shine to. So it's one of those movies. I don't expect this movie to hold on well in the second weekend, since it opened so low, and even though critically it's well reviewed, but the audience score is concerning. So I don't, like I say, it's 7 million. If it drop off huge, it's still sub 10 million. So it's gonna be some low number, for Bad Times at El Royale. All right, number 8, it is The House with a Clock in Its Walls. The Jack Black movie, and Jack Black has 2 movies in theaters last weekend. So it pulled in about 3.9 million in its fourth weekend, 46% drop off from the previous weekend, and 62 million domestic so far. The budget's only about 42 million, so it's doing pretty well domestically. Overseas, it's 39 million overseas for a total of 101 million worldwide. So okay, it's doing okay for one of these special effects movies. Even though it's doing okay, I don't see a sequel in the offing, since these numbers are kind of not spectacular. All right, number 9, it is The Hate U Give. The movie stars Amanda Steinberg, Regina Hall, Russell Hornsby, Commons in here. It's based on Angie Thomas's novel, the same name. About Amanda plays this character whose childhood friend was shot by the police when they're on a ride, right? And then she has to figure out what to do, right? To stand witness, etc., report, tell the truth, etc. And then there is this dynamic about people living in the poor neighborhood and people from the affluent neighborhood where she went to school, where she lives in the poor neighborhood and she went to go to school in the more affluent part of the neighborhood. So there's that. Dynamic going on, very well reviewed, 97% Rotten Tomatoes. It opened well in its limited release, right? It pulled in about 1.8 million in the second weekend, right? The first weekend in limited release. Let's see how it did. The first weekend it pulled in about 512K. That's in 36 theaters. The per theater average is pretty good, about 14K per theater average. And the second weekend it added additional theaters, expanded, but the per theater average is only about 7K. So you can see that drop some, and it is going wide this weekend. So we will see how well it will do when it goes wide. I mean, it is concerning when the per theater average started up high, but then when it expanded, it went lower. So we don't know if the awareness or the demand for this movie is that great, but we'll see. All right, closing out the top 10 is the Paul Feig thriller, A Simple Favor. It pulled in about 1.4 million in its fifth weekend. Domestic gross is about 52 million so far, and overseas it pulled in an additional 31 million for a worldwide total of 83 million. So it's doing pretty well for Paul Feig thriller. He usually do the comedies, but he's doing a thriller right now, and it's doing better than I expected the movie to do. All right, so that's it for the top 10. Let's move on to the wide releases. We're going to only have one wide release. The big one is the Halloween, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and directed by David Gordon Green. So it's one of these Halloween movies, franchise. I believe this is the 11th movie in the Halloween franchise. Right now it is well reviewed at Rotten Tomatoes, about 85%. I expect the numbers to drop off when more reviews comes in. And like I said, it's directed by David Gordon Green. Interesting thing about David Gordon Green is that he started out as kind of like a small drama director. He did George Washington, All the Real Girls, Undertow, and then he went on to direct more commercial movies like Pineapple Express, Your Highness, which bombed, The Sitter, and Stronger. So he kind of started off small, like you expect him to continue on like Steven Soderbergh to direct more like art house movies, except that he went to more commercial movies, which some did okay, like Pineapple Express, but the others didn't do as well, didn't perform as well. So Jamie Lee Curtis returns to play this character, right? Judy Greer is here, Andy Meticock as well, and it's produced by Jason Blum. Hey, so Jamie Lee Curtis is back in this movie, kind of like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2. Curtis' character kept ready, was prepared. She shoots every day, got various firearms, getting ready for the day that Michael returns, and he did, right? Michael was locked up in a cell, during a transport. The bus crashed, and he, along with a couple of other prisoners, escaped, and he's back. So how well would this movie do? As you can see, this movie is banking on nostalgia, right? It's the 11th movie already. The previous movies, did okay, not great, right? It's a low-budget horror movie. It started off as a low-budget horror movie, with John Carpenter, directed by John Carpenter, right? Banking on nostalgia, but will people turn out for this movie? I think they might, you see, Jamie Lee Curtis still has her fans, and Halloween is kind of like her franchise right here, and I never bet against Jason Blum, right? Him and horror movies, even though some didn't work out, but most do, right? So and it is Halloween, open around Halloween time, or week before Halloween, or 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks before Halloween. So I expect this movie to play to the audience, right? It's gonna do well. I think it's probably, conservatively, I think it could probably open to 15 to 20 million. If it does really well, it could go higher, But with horror movies, who knows, right? Okay, so that's it for this week's podcast. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.